However, with this B-17 crash, as we saw, he turned, and he's only at 500 feet descending now because he can't maintain altitude. He still hasn't declared an emergency. They switch him over to the tower. Now the winds are calm. Why not just point at the airport and land on anything you can? Because this is one of the things I've argued with flight schools. If you have an emergency and you can get back on the airport proper, I don't care if you land on a runway, if you land on the grass, if you land anywhere, the fire trucks are here. The trucks are here. Your chances of survival are far greater if you make it onto the airport. Of course, if you lose it on departure and you're 300-400 feet, unless you happen to be flying an acrobatic aircraft and extremely talented to be able to make that 180 back, I've seen some of them go well, and I've seen many go bad. That's a real tough decision, and I wouldn't want to be put in that place. We had one pilot, we know who, with a student, took off from midfield 2-4, lost his engine, did the 180, but ended up going down over here off of Betts Highway by Long Island Hardware. They got lucky, hit the wires, that went well. Bayport, where are you? There you are back there, your son. He tried to commit, that wasn't your, oh, that's Bill Clifford's. Why do I always get you two confused? Oh, yeah. You both have gray hair. You know, he lost his engine right on departure of Bayport. And that's a rough place to lose an engine because there is nowhere to go. There's tons of oak trees and tons of houses. First instinct, Piper Cup did that many years earlier, went into Frank's hangar. Almost hit the fuel truck. That would end up bad. But they make the 180 trying to come back, and we all know how that turned out. Luckily, they were able to survive with some serious injuries, but each situation is different. But the B-17, now he gets over to the tower. The tower controller realizes that he's on the downwind at 300 feet. I don't think anyone here can tell me that's a good thing. That's, you're skimming the trees at this point. Why he's not turning into the crossing runway with calm winds, or just to get on the airport and away from houses. But they continued on the downwind. The controller goes, they still didn't declare an emergency. But now the controller, who should have declared the emergency, just said, well, I'm going to do you need priority landing? I'm going to pull the other aircraft off the final. Luckily, he did. He took the two airliners away from the airport, which was the smart move. He realized he needed priority landing, but he still should have rolled the trucks. Yes, sir?
What's the role of the trucks? How would the emergency
because if it had been a different controller, he would have said, because this is, again, when you run into these controllers who are not pilots, they don't understand. All right, you're flying, keep flying. Go follow that guy. You're not an emergency. You just, maybe your sight's here, go ahead, keep going. If you run into a control, and I guarantee you, you're going to run into a lot. The people today, the training is not the same as it once was. Most of them are not like we were. Most of the controllers back in my day were all pilots or had some piloting experience. So as they come around, the pilot should declare an emergency because first thing you do when you declare an emergency, I hit the crash zone. The trucks are now staged at different points around the airport in case you come and don't make it. I want those trucks right there because that seconds in an aircraft fire make all the difference in the world. And I can tell you that from being a fireman for many years. They didn't declare an emergency. The controller didn't declare it for them, which he should have. They came around and he realizes something's wrong. He goes, how's your progress to runway 6? We're getting there. They knew at this point that at that point, those experienced pilots should have known that they're in serious trouble. And as we all know, they hit the approach lights because now they're too low. And then because of hitting the right wing, it made them deviate to the right and hit into the building. And unfortunately, it didn't go well. It took several minutes for the crash trucks to get there because they hadn't been rolled. If you have a problem, this is where so many people are wrong, and I'm sure Ben can back me up on this one. Pilots are afraid to declare an emergency. How many guys here have declared an emergency? I'm impressed. How many are afraid to? A lot of people are afraid to, and they're not willing to admit it. Why are you afraid? Paperwork. Because of that guy back there, the evil flight standards. They're going to come look in my logbook, and I lied. I did 1.2 hours, and I put 1.3. They're worried. Oh, my medical is due in 3 days, and my insurance is going to go up, just like getting a speeding ticket, And people worry about the dumb things. I'm worried about my life. If I have a rough running mag, if I think that, and you know, how many, all right, let me ask you this. If you have a rough running mag, you're in a single engine aircraft and you've got a bad mag, is that emergency, yes or no? Yes, why? When's the other one going to go? I don't want to take that risk. Right now the engine's running rough. I'm not developing full power, but, oh, I can limp my way back. Now, I want everything in my favor, because when I land, and I land with my rough mag and those trucks are out there, first of all, the fireman will tell you, I wish I'd actually thought to bring something with me over here. Fire rescue yells at the tower all the time, but that's normal. We have a bad relationship. Just kidding. But what happens, the firemen yell at us, we're paid good money to sit here and wait for the what if. And when you pull that phone, it's good for us. Because one, it's practice. It keeps everyone on their toes. We run the equipment which needs to be run, and we get out there, and we're there just in case. And we would rather be there just in case than not. B-17, when he crashed into that building, you know, they lost half of the people on board the plane. My question to you is, if the truck had been sitting there, and these trucks have, you know, double engines, one to drive, one to pump, so they don't, it's not like a real fire truck. They can be instantaneous. They'll put foam on you in a second. Would that have made a difference? We may never know. But that being the case, I would rather have that truck there. And here's a good example. This is going way back. I'm showing my age now. This is back in about 1980, about 82 or 83. Right here in front of Mid Island, on runway 28, when 28 used to come over this way. They dug all that up. My very good friend and best man at our wedding, Jeff Johnson, he still works at Fire Rescue. He's been over there for umpteen million years. It was his first week on the job. He just got certified on the truck, and there was an inbound emergency with a twin-engine aircraft with tip tanks, stating that he had unsafe gear indications, which is an emergency, because we never know if it's going to come up or not. So he was at the end. He was over here by Mid Island, by the old intersection of Sierra and 28 back in those days. And he's just sitting there. He's got his thing running. He's got his hand on the trigger waiting to hit foam. They always prepare themselves. Plane lands and is rolling out. And it's like, oh, this is no big deal. With that, as the plane approaches him, the left gear collapsed, hit the fuel tank, ruptured it, and immediately ignited. He says, I'd love to tell you that it was all my training and my expertise that helped me put out the fire, but he goes, actually, I just went and squeezed the trigger as it went by me, and he put the fire out as the plane slid by him. He goes, he got all kinds of accolades and pat on the back, good job, first week on the job. He goes, yeah. And meanwhile, he calls back, he goes, I just did it out of fright. But the point is, the truck was there. Had the truck not been there with that foam, what would have happened? We all know these airplanes are like beer cans. It takes about 12 seconds for one to be gone. I would rather have the truck there. Don't be afraid to declare an emergency. Ben, I just have a question, if you can speak loudly.
Okay.
If an aircraft lands and he declares an emergency and it goes well, what do you require from him?
Require probably just to confirm that you were current at the time of the event.
Yeah, you're going to want a phone call
Yep.
and say what happened.
If there's a maintenance event that precipitated it, just some sort of corrective action as to how it got fixed.
Exactly. Nothing. You're not going to rip their license away from them. You're not going to string them up by their toenails. It's just usually most of these emergencies can be resolved with a phone call. More times than not. And even like a lot of people worry now with flat tires is the new thing. If you get a flat on the runway, you got to call VISDA, which I think is kind of silly myself. But again, you're looking for maintenance issues, which is to all of our benefits. Oops, I keep walking in front of the camera. All right, we all know how to properly declare an emergency. As silly as it sounds, like it's right out of TV, the tower would prefer, yeah, I'm declaring an emergency. No, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. So it's the 1, 2, 3, I'm declaring an emergency. I've lost my mag. I've lost my engine. I've lost my mind. Whatever the case may be. You want to tell us, and then we're going to come back to you and say, Roger, proceed direct to the field, or whatever, if any help or advice we have to give you. And then we're going to ask you the basics. Souls on board? Why? We want to know how many people to look for. Fuel on board? We want to know how big the plume is going to be. That's terrible. And three, yeah, souls on board, fuel on board, and I'm getting old, Ben, help me. Well, no, that won't matter. It's all going to be brown. Because you're going to make it that way. No, we're going to see you if you're coming into the field. Now, if you're landing off-site, of course, we're going to want any kind of information. And another good thing, not just on an airport proper, I'm glad you brought that up, because if you're flying along, when I go back and forth to our house in Pennsylvania, most of the time I talk to approach control. There's days when it's super busy and I just skirt the class Bravo and go on my own way. But the entire way, I am on frequency with the next controlling sector. I may not be talking to them, but I'm always on the frequency. I want to hear what's going on around me. But also, if something goes wrong, again, like having that fire truck right there, my frequency's right there. I'm not fumbling for the radio trying to figure out what to do. I want to be able to key up and say, hey, New York approach, 3274, just lost my engine. I'm over Northport Stacks at 3,000 feet. I'm returning towards Iceland, or whatever I decide to do at that point. I want to be on frequency to do it immediately. So as another good practice, I'm always on frequency with someone. Yes?
How do you keep track of what frequency you're in?
I know from experience the next frequency, but also if you're not experienced in the area, then in that point, like we flew up to, my wife and I flew up to Mount Washington this past summer with our Cherokee. We wanted to visit my 95-year-old aunt, so it was a beautiful day, so let's go for a ride and enjoy ourselves. There, because I'm going into unfamiliar territory, I did talk to approach. Not that there was any airplanes in the way, not that I needed permission to cross any airspace, but I did it because I'm unfamiliar. And one of the most important things in declaring an emergency with an air traffic facility, two things. The person you're talking to has familiarity with where you are. You may not know where the next airport is. You may not have a Garmin 430, which has the nearest airport thing. You may not have, you might just have a basic Cessna, although I don't think anybody flies that anymore, unless you're at a Bayport. And then, again, I've seen it where a controller, a friend of mine, one of my instructors I knew 100 years ago, used to ferry aircraft from the Piper Aircraft Factory down in Vero Beach up to deliver up here to the north. He was in a Seneca, landed in, I want to say it was either North or South Carolina. I forget the exact airport. But you know how wooded it is down that way? Off of 95, there's nothing. It's just tons of woods. He landed. It was raining like, cats and dogs. He pulled in to get fuel. He runs inside. The kid goes out and fuels the plane. It's a brand new Seneca. And he goes out there and it's pouring rain. So he's not going to pull the caps to look because the rain's going to go in. Already enough of that one probably. But he does a quick sump and then goes. Whether he really did that quick sump, nobody will ever know. He got in the plane, took off, and as he's climbing out talking to approach, he starts overheating. And then both engines quit. They filled him with Jet A. Because it's a nice fancy new Seneca, looked pretty snazzy. And to the kid line guy, it looked like a jet. Neither turboprops. This thing, oh, that's a big airplane. I'm going to put jet fuel in it. You put jet fuel in it. Now he's IFR, total IMC. He can't see anything. He's raining cats and dogs. Visibility is like maybe a half mile. And he had an angel on his shoulder. He didn't know where he was. Nothing showing up on his charts because this is before flight stuff. The controller he was talking to was familiar, came from that general area. He says, there's no airports, there's nothing really I can vector you to. I'm going to vector you towards 95 to the best. And that didn't show up, this didn't show up on our radar charts at this time. After this accident, that became mandated. We all have a button now we can hit and all the roads will show up. The major roads. So, that's how the FAA works. Every time something happens, we go, oh, we could have used that. And they late and $1 short, but it works. So, he vectored him to where he thought 95 should be for him. He broke out at 180 feet, he said. Exactly. You had down to the pen. He breaks out and he looks and he sees trees just ahead of him, but he looks out the right and he sees a tractor trailer. Slipped it over and landed right behind him. And he pulled off into the median. He just veered off into the median, spun it around, just sat there in the plane waiting for the cops to come. He says, it's raining too hard to get out. And there was no reason to get out. Nothing happened. He landed safely, didn't even damage the aircraft. Of course, both engines were toast. But again, this is why you when you talk to an approach control or any air traffic facility, we have equipment that you may not have. We can vector you towards things that you cannot see or find yourself. We can also label your aircraft. So if you do go down in the woods, if you do go down along the beach or in the water, we can pinpoint that almost within a few hundred feet of where you went down on our radar. With that, we can transmit that data to the Coast Guard, search and rescue, fire departments. This is important information. That's why don't be so proud. If something goes wrong, declare the emergency. All right, if you have a situation where you lose your electrical, it's starting to go, what is the proper thing to say? Pan, pan, pan. It's an urgent issue. It's not an emergency. I really need to get down. How many have ever declared a pan, pan? In my entire career in air traffic, I've never heard a pan, pan. Now, my wife, on the other hand, worked over at Air Inc. doing the international flights going across the pond. When you deal with airlines and international flights, they're a little more apt to use pan, pan. So she did hear it quite a few times. I go, really, you heard it, pan, pan? I would have a sarcastic remark if I heard it, but... and there was one sad instance where pan, pan was used, and it should have been an emergency. If any of you guys remember back... I don't remember the type aircraft. It was one airline or another, but it was Swiss Air, I think it was. Swiss Air declared a pan because he had an electrical issue. It was the entertainment system had shorted out and started a fire. There was smoke. They declared a pan and did a circle because they didn't want to upset the passengers descending too quickly. Which at that point, you point the nose down and say, "Get me on the ground now." And we know that didn't go well. They landed in Mary's Cove, I think it was. Peggy's Cove. I knew it was something's Cove. And that didn't end well. They all perished. Again, because they took their time, they don't want to, being too proud, no, I don't want to upset my passengers. No. Burning to death is going to upset your passengers. Landing and getting off the plane, even if it's going down that slide, is going to be a happy ending. So always err on the side of safety. If you're uncertain, when in doubt, bang it out. That's what we always said in the tower. When in doubt, bang out the fire rescue. It doesn't look right, it doesn't sound right, you just do it. Let's see. And of course, like I said too, once you make a decision, stick to your decision. You can't go back. You don't have power. You don't have too many choices. When you make that choice, if it gets closer and you see something turn bad, when given lemons, you make lemonade. Do the best you can. Any questions so far? I'm doing what my wife always yells at me for. I'm just talking nonstop. I'm sorry, second? You got to speak up a little bit.
Now's your chance.
Now's my chance. Yes, I'm out of the towers. Well, actually, one of the good things about being out of the tower, which the controllers up there learned very quickly and they stopped picking on me, is I can say whatever I want on the frequency now and not get in trouble. Well, except for Ben. But I know not to say certain things. But certain controllers, I've had certain things to say. Such as Mr. Happy. Mr. Happy, his name is Richard. And I have an abbreviation for his name. That's completely legitimate. And he gave me I said, "Thank you, Dick." And he goes, "You can't say that." I go, "I don't work for the FAA anymore. I can say whatever I want, Dick." I shut him up. And when I fly in, he gets off frequency. Because he knows I'm going to ride him. And when I know he's in the tower, I can hear him talk. These people aren't that bright. They're all yakking up in the cab. And you can hear it on the frequency. You've heard it yourselves. You hear one controller, but you can hear the other ones in the back laughing or doing something. So I can hear him back. Back. And I go, "Tell Dick to keep his mouth down because I can hear him." Oh, he is the most arrogant SOB on the planet. And it doesn't make sense because I always say misery loves company. And there's a lot of controllers, the older ones in particular, who were very angry, very upset. And I tell them, I go, "What are you so upset about?" I said, "You've got money, you've got a great job, you've got a good retirement. What are you so mad about?" Because they're never happy. And I realized what the problem was. How can I put this clear? They're not Republicans. I'm sorry, I can say that too now. the most miserable people I ever met in my life. And they used to give my wife and I a lot of grief because they said, how do you have this house? How do you have that airplane? You work at the same place I do. I go, because at the end of the day, when I left work, I didn't go home and watch CNN and cry. I said I went out, I had vending machines. I did flight instruction. I did construction. I did if I wanted something, I went out and I worked for it. I still do today. That's the difference between what I said before and the other thing. Unfortunately, it's a sad truth. And most pilots I find tend to be, because to afford an airplane means you're hardworking people. And I find that goes hand in hand. But unfortunately, a lot of these people up in the cab, I don't know why, are just very unhappy people. And that truly is what you said before. They're not happy until you're not happy. Because misery loves company. Any other questions? Wow, you guys are a quiet group today. Must be cold, still trying to thaw out? Well, what we got to do is get you guys all to fly up to our airport. We're doing a lot of work up there. We've widened the runway width is still there, but we used to have high grass and like scrub right along the edge of the runway. I took the brush hog this year and we cleaned it all out. We're in the process of buying the rest of the airport. Hopefully it'll be complete by spring. It's a long process, at which time the airport name will change from MSM to Wayne's World. Yes, sir. Oh my God, I can have 1,000. Okay. Well, now I feel like Johnny, not Johnny Carson. I feel like, yes, I'm getting old again. Price is right. I feel like I'm Bob Barker. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
I have an answer.
What is the number for your airport?
PS50 is the identifier from airport. Public School 50. Yes, sir.
It's no longer that.
No, it still is PS50. That is the Pennsylvania identifier for my airport.
Look it up, you'll get a heliport in Bloomsburg.
No.
Yeah.
We just looked it up on the phone 2 minutes before the thing started. PS50 does come up. I mean, it is in foreplay. It's MSM Airport. Look up. Dave just looked it up right now. It's on there, PS50. Funny things. Funny things was the day I walked out of that tower. And I said, now you guys will have to work. But funny things, I can't tell you 1,000 funny things I've seen with student pilots. And again, just like planning for emergencies, teaching procedure, always looking for things. I'm always one who believes in never yelling at a pilot, but I pick on you and make you embarrassed if you do something wrong. If I embarrass you, you're never going to forget me. Right, JC? I've had many things. Oh, one more question. Yes, sir? You have an embarrassing story. Here comes the microphone.
We want everybody to hear how embarrassing this is. It happened early on, and I know you guys did for me.
Probably.
I had a problem with a rental aircraft down in Rhode Island, so at the last minute I switched it up. I called for a clearance on the numbers of the other aircraft that were just like taxi down, after like taxi clearance. You stop me on the runway, told me to shut the plane off, get out of the door, and go look at the numbers on the side.
That sounds like something I would have said, yes. We've had many pilots who jump from plane to plane and get confused. And I told the one guy, I remember, I know it wasn't on the road, there was a taxi in front of the carriage as you go by. He goes, that's not 380. So I go, 380, that's what he was calling himself. I said, 380, hold your position for a moment. I said, if you look at the dash, there's a little placard with numbers and an N in front of it. Can you read that to me? Oh. But we've had lots of them. Yes, sir. Hello, Rich. He's got a beautiful Sierra, one of the prettier one I've ever seen.
Thanks, Wayne. Question, if you could do prepared emergency, it'd be a good idea to put on the LT switch days just to back up.
All right, that's a good, I'm glad you brought that because that was in part of my notes, which I tend to fade away from my notes very quickly. If you declare an emergency and you're on frequency with a facility, they already have you on a discrete code. So you do not necessarily have to squawk 7700 anymore. We have in our new equipment, we have a 2 keystrokes we can do and type EM and slew out and enter on your tag if you're already tagged up. So by doing so, you're tracked to the ground and you're on every facility's radar. Well, I'm going back. I'm just saying one step at a time. And the ELT, if you're out in the woods, if you're here on Long Island, if we're tagging you up and we got the EM, is it necessary? No. Is it an added bonus? Yes. It's one added layer of safety. However, if you're somewhere away from Long Island and you're out in the woods or any place like that, most definitely, because our radar will track you down to a certain point where we may lose you at that. Long Island, we got you to the ground on almost every inch of the line. But also, again, if you have a comm failure or if you have an electrical failure, does anybody know what the proper procedure is in the way squawks? 7600 is ready, but do you know what you're really supposed to do? 7700 for 1 minute, then 7600, 77 for 1 minute, 7600. Does anybody do that? I've never seen it. I see everybody squawk 7600. And that's enough for us. When you squawk 7600, whether we get these out of Republic a lot, I don't know if they got bad planes over there or just bad pilots. Whoa! I worked there for too many years. But what happened over there is we'll see it on our radar and camera all the time. Somebody else, it'll say RF, radio failure, and it'll come up, it'll highlight on our scope, which we call a bloom. Your normal tag, if any of you visited the tag, you see the normal little tag you see. But when it's an emergency or radio failure, it blossoms. Now, if it's a hijack, then we see a lot of little blossoms around it. Those are fighter jets. And usually the blossom in the middle is when you're done with your job. But we have...
Rand, we have a question.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you're flying along, you're not talking to anybody, you're 3,000 feet, say, in the area of Long Island. You're not talking to anybody, so all I am right now on your screen is a dot.
No. With our new radars, we've actually come a long ways in the length of my career. Actually, in the past 5 to 10 years, we've really made leaps and bounds. Now, with ADS-B, when this is fully done, every aircraft has a tag.
Also, with the ADS-B, yes, you will know.
We see a 1,200 foot tag, or 1,200 code tag, I'm sorry.
Right,
It'll say
1,200.
1,200 on our data block, and it'll say your call sign. Where before, we would get just a block, a square block, with altitude and speed, but no type or call sign. But now, with ADS-B, we're getting all that data, which is very important to us to give you proper traffic calls. Although right now, they haven't told us where, if we see the type, even though it's a 1,200 code, it's unverified. Even though, in my opinion, if it's ADS-B, it's verified. But they haven't come around to changing that regulation yet. So they'll say traffic, 12 o'clock, 2 miles, westbound, 2,000, type unknown.
Type on something. Okay, so now you're flying along, you're in an unfamiliar area, you're not on the frequency of any kind, you got a full flight going on, and, everything's good. And then you have an emergency. 121.5.
121.5, most of the times will work.
Most of the time.
Because there are, especially when you get up, Long Island is always going to work. In any of the general heavily populated areas, it's going to work. When you get out, like up by us, it may or may not work because you've got a lot of mountains, you've got a lot of dead zones in it. Like at 3,000 feet, at 3,000 feet at my airport, you're only 1,500 feet above the ground. And I have a hard time just getting a whole straight approach because it's only about 20 minutes away. So you have to be aware of that. That's why whenever I'm in even though I love ForeFlight, it was the best thing ever invented. I love ForeFlight. I think it's fantastic. I have a mount in my plane with mine mounted on a full-size iPad, articulating mount. My wife can look at it, or I can look at it. And I find it to be very helpful and a good safety measure for the fact that I can have a visual display without trying to look at a folded-up map on my lap, which I did for 100 years. And I can see everything going on around me, which I think is fantastic. However, don't put your life in ForeFlight's hand. Yes. Because what happens when your iPad dies? I mean, I've had pilots call me up and go, oh, if you don't have somebody to hold your hand, if you don't have that toy, you can't fly your plane. Heck, that happens with the airline. Say again? Don't laugh. I had a guy go out, 1 second. I had a guy go out, taxi out for a check ride with Frank D'Angelo was on board. and he gets towards out to 50.